need to stand up and stretch? No, we good? Okay, we good. So everybody knows how the class works, right? How many new persons we have? Three new persons. Okay. So there's a 30-minute break, and majority of the students normally say, let's take it at the end. We can take it halfway through, because halfway through, people just fall asleep, and I just have to shake them and say, Cargill, you still up? So, you can get a little walk, a cup of tea or what have you, or at the end, we can leave at 12 o'clock, right? There's a 10%, so everybody agree for 12 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Everybody here. And then I long-winded, so y'all got, when y'all see 11:59, you'll Miss Bullet, do the little finger, and I'll know to wind it down. What else? 10% for participation. People take it for granted. Oh, I don't have to. Once you read, and there's good dialogue, and you answer the questions, then you get your 10% for participation. If you don't miss more than 2 classes. If you miss more than 2 classes and you read, you have to, negotiate your 10%. Miss Bullet, I read a lot. Or I answer all your questions and I still deserve this test. But try not to miss more than 2 classes, because it's discussion based. What is supposed to happen is you're supposed to take this lovely book home, you are to read it, and we are to come back and have a discussion. There's also a lot of case studies and typologies at the back of the book to give you real life scenarios about what happened. The 40 recommendations, everybody's familiar with the 40 recommendations by now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get familiar. So the whole 40 is at the back of the book. After that, you will see a lot of typologies by the Egmont group. That's a big thing. So in your spare time, read those criminal cases. The Egmont group is a group of FIUs. Everybody know who the FIU is, right? The Financial Intelligence Unit. That's where we file our STRs. So there's a group that they come together and they talk about various cases, and they have them categorized into topics like fraud, drug trafficking, human trafficking, what have you. On the last year's exam, it was a mandatory question, worth 20 points, and that mandatory question spoke about those same fraud cases. Document 3 fraud cases from the Egmont group, and that was the mandatory question on the final exam. Egmont. Yeah, look at the back.
I have the back.
Yeah, so they are different. It's hard to number it because we start with the FATF recommendations, right? I can tell you which, so you have to look for these yellow pages that say typology, and I can tell you where the Egmont group starts. Yeah, so it looks like it's at the back. Let me look for my, and it says type. Yeah.
So the last yellow page at the back.
Yeah, last yellow page at the back, so, yeah.
So it's 101, organized crime.
Yeah, typology 4, and it says Egmont group cases, so look for this yellow page, it says typology 4.
Mine's good.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah, and this, the Egmont group, okay? And if you go through it, there are different cases, and one section, keep going, there's no way you can read all of it, but you need to at least familiarize yourself. And as we get closer to the exam, we'll have a revision class, and I'll let you know exactly, what areas you need to focus on. So if you are the Egmont group and you see page 39, that's where it says fraud. So these are the cases. There's a few cases here on fraud. So they just tell you the type of things that happen where persons got away with fraud. Remember, this is the Financial Intelligence Unit. They from globally, like the Association of Financial Intelligence Units. They come together and they said these are our most popular cases on fraud, or had the highest dollar value where there was a fine, or highest dollar value of money that was defrauded, like that. So the mandatory question was, discuss 3 of the cases that you read from the Egmont group on fraud. Okay? So remember now, intro was just an overview. What is compliance? Can I do this? Can I handle how comprehensive it is? Do I like to read it? Are my decision based? Right? And so short 4 weeks. This is 10 weeks. More extensive, same topics, but we dive a little deeper. We require more information, more understanding. Okay? This then sets you up to, can I do ICA? So you go to intro, get the overview, and a lot of persons, they don't take it intro because they are at a certain level, they've worked in compliance before, or they've been in the banking system for a few years, and they feel comfortable that they know the basics, right? Come to intro, and once you could successfully complete intermediate, then you can go on to ICA. And everybody know what ICA is, right? Okay? There's a BACO, is the Bahamas Association of Compliance Officers. They have a student membership. Now, I know there's a fee of $200 to join BACO. You have to submit your resume, and you have to apply as a student. And once you finish the ICA, then they make you a professional. And you are able to attend all of their seminars, you get discounts. It's a good association to be a part of. And normally your company should pay for at least 2 memberships. So normally, when I was working with Royal Bank, they paid for me to be a part of the International Compliance Association as well as the local association, BACO. Right? So that's how it works. So you really shouldn't incur any cost, but you should join these associations to get all the newsletters, the updates, because again, you're supposed to be reading the newspaper every day, keeping abreast of what's going on locally as well as globally. If any country that if you work in the offshore industry and any countries that you deal in, right? We read the newspaper every day. Why? Why not? You was an intro?
No.
Okay, that's why. Okay. Who was an intro? Who is not reading the newspaper every day?
Like twice a week.
Twice a week? The business section of the comics? With reading? Okay. All of us are on Facebook and we love social media. Did we put the local news on our feed so if something happened, it could jump out at us and we could know what's going on? No? That's the easiest way. You have to separate business from pleasure.
I agree, but
That's why I didn't say it on my Facebook.
Okay, have a corporate Facebook page then. Do something, no more excuses, but you have to, that's the easiest way to keep abreast.
You could do it on
just
your
the
LinkedIn.
financial,
Yeah.
like if they had something like updates with just financial news, sure, I'd subscribe to that. Don't subscribe to the news. Everything is negative.
Yeah, Bloomberg, it's
Bloomberg,
financial
yeah,
news,
Bloomberg,
Yahoo
yeah.
Finance is financial news. No more excuses. Remember, professionally, we have to develop ourselves. Okay, we have to be well-rounded enough to when we get in these positions, we can handle it. We can't just finally get the position, now we scrambling to familiarize ourselves with how the industry works. Right? We have to be well set in the industry and we know enough people, we know who to call. Remember, when I was at Royal, I had to have legal all the time, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, a year to get information. And when you call a lawyer says, "Hi, Miss Bullet, hey, very happy to hear from you. It's now 2:30." And then, "Okay, thanks, please call us whenever you need something else. It's 3:45. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you
Time.
might.
Okay, they are logging their time to send me a $10,000 bill. Right? So therefore, at the end of the year, I fighting for my bonus now. Would you think my manager coming from Barbados, he bringing my legal bill for the year to say, "Well, we would have given you this, however, you incurred $30,000 in legal fees and blah, 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 blah." Right? And so what do? When you go to these conferences, you sit right next to this lawyer who needs some help with something else, and y'all help each other.
That's right.
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Miss Bullard.
Bullard?
Yeah, Miss Bullard. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, no problem. And then let me know if you have any questions, just stop me. Yeah, so that's what you do. And you keep the cost down and then you get this bonus, but when your cost is high, because you really won't have all the answers. There's no way. Okay? And so if you could pick up a phone where somebody will not charge you and call in a favor and say, hey, I have this situation, what did y'all do? How did y'all handle it? Right? Because even after you do your research, before you make that decision may cost your institution, it may cost you, it may cost somebody's job, you know, so you really wanna go, I like to ask 5 people. Persons may think that's, you know, a little bit excessive, but I wanna make sure.
That are safe and sound.
Right, and then, I am not perfect, you know, you could mitigate risk, you can't eliminate it. You know, we have people sitting down, hacking all day, that's their job. We have people all day they in this class right now, trying to defraud the system. Excuse me 1 second, get some numbers, I'll be right back. Network,
I give you, sorry.
And also something else has to do.
she coming in now?
Yeah.
She coming.
Yeah.
She wanna go. Okay, then we do that first, yeah. Right, so where I stop was, you'll have to remind me. Right, with
Networking.
About
Networking,
Being sure
yeah.
about the decision.
Right, so you wanna make sure that you make the right decision, right? And so you would have asked, you know, your colleagues outside, you know, in your network, how would you handle this? Have you had an incident like this before? What did you do? How did you do it?
How do you do that while maintaining like secrecy though?
You're not good. Bank secrecy is you saying that Miss Bullet account overdraw and put this and that, and the next thing you saying that you say, I have a client where, you know what I mean, no names,
Yeah,
no
it gives a scenario.
what have you. Like CSR, CRS is a big thing now, Common Reporting Standard. The tax, you know, before everybody knows what FACA is, the US tax reporting, and CRS is the world or the European tax reporting. Right? I was at a conference. We have had a lot of persons threaten us and say, you know, we are gonna sue you because we didn't give you right of consent to share this knowledge, share my information, all sorts of stuff. Thank you. And so therefore I was at a conference where I met the head of compliance at another bank who was actually being sued. You know, and from what she said, I will let you look at the civil suit so you will see what you need to cover. You need to make sure that your right of consent is updated, or if you send out a flyer, when you send out your CRS forms, put it at the bottom that I give consent. Because the case, they were being sued because the person said, I opened my account in 1999. CRS did not exist in 1999. So therefore I gave you consent to share that information based on my account information from 1999. This is now 2019. That right of consent does not, you know, it doesn't speak to days in the current event. But what should happen, you should be updating your forms at least every 10 years and covering these things. So he may have a case. And you know, in America, they don't sue. It was 1 point something million and up and above they suing for. You know what I mean? So from that case and from the different charges that he brought against them, I was able to update our forms to ensure that we covered this, we covered that, we covered the next thing. And right after I finished that, I met somebody else who said, I'm new in compliance at a boutique bank. They don't have a lot of policy and procedures. I don't know where to start. Could you give me an outline? You know? And so even the regulators, a couple of years ago, at Royal Bank, I was working on service level agreements, you know, with different institutions, in terms of the whole Royal Bank computer system, what have you. I really didn't know what to do. We used to have somebody from Canada come down and do it for us. That person retired. There was nobody left. We were having an on-site visit. Central Bank had warned us previously that these SLAs must be up to date. 6 years later, they were still not up to date. Okay, so we were about to get a serious fine. And of course, at a certain level, you don't just tell the regulator, you don't know what to do. You know what I mean? But I said, you know what, I really don't know what to do. Nobody has been out of place for years. Nobody has ever updated. The person, I was supposed to go to Canada to get training, the person retired, so I don't know what to do. And the regulator said, I will help you. Very, very helpful, because before, oh, don't tell Central Bank this, don't tell Securities Commission this. We was afraid of them, like just like how everybody afraid of the auditors. Don't tell them you don't know how to do this, but I said, I don't know what to do. So y'all go write me up this time, and I will get it, the next time, I can do this right. They gave me examples, they walked me through it, they said, send us a sample of what you've done, we'll let you know if it's sufficient. I sent them a sample, 9 samples, they sent all back, no, it's not sufficient, but put some meat in it, but it helped.
I find that the approach has improved
Yes.
drastically in the last year.
It has. See, we've moved from being the regulator or the person in charge or the warden to the coach, the trainer, the person, and even in the audit too, audit has changed, because back when I started in Royal Bank and I used to be at Finkel Robinson Road, they used to say, oh, you dumb, how you get this position? Who's your family? Like, all sorts of stuff like this, what you do, Like, they used to call you
They
names
were
and
very
really,
harsh.
really, they were really harsh. And that's why, and so the culture was hide, don't tell them you don't know how to do it, pretend, make something up,
Yeah.
whatever. And so, it was so frustrating, I just said, I don't know what to do, I need help. And shockingly, they helped me, and it changed the entire culture, entire relationship with regulators. And eventually, 2 years later, I got it right. And then they congratulated me and they said, thank you for speaking up, thank you for reaching out and getting help. I said, thank you all for helping. Now, we still did get a note for that year, but we had an age-old problem, like, for as long as Royal Bank Wealth Management was open, these SLAs were not up to date. They did not have the proper agreement in place. All sorts of stuff was missing, but it was fixed. So in the end, I got a lot of rewards, even though it took me 2 years, I got a lot of rewards and good bonus. Yeah, good bonus for doing that. Okay, so you can't be afraid to ask for help, can't be afraid to speak up. And with that new compliance officer, I was able to say, listen, you don't have to be afraid of the regulator. They will help. You may meet 1 or 2 who will shut you down, but for the most part, they will help you. They will lead you in the right direction. It's gonna be a lot of work, but try it. Okay? Good. So nobody had their book, but again, participation is 10%. There's an extra 5% if you go to Rotary, Toastmasters, and Key Club, just to network.
What about things like business outlook?
Business outlook, any seminar, anything that you come back and share with the class. Please go, if you go, take somebody with you. Okay, because you are networking, you want to go, you want to introduce yourself, you want to learn, you want to get the information, and whatever handouts and slides they have, trust me, keep them. At some point in your career, you will need them, so start your own library and organize it. Because I had a library, like I used to just go and throw these stuff in the bag, and then one day I just sit down and organize it, and everything that I have has been useful to me. That's your research right there. Because a lot of things ain't on the internet, a lot of things ain't on Google. When you see the ICA questions coming out, they ask you about a new development that hasn't been put into place, so they can get fresh ideas and then put it into place. That's how it really works. So they use the students to go out and do their research. Right, so.
We can negotiate that 5%, like 2.5 for the Toastmasters and
Why you want to negotiate down rather than up? Explain that to me. I don't know.
timing.
No attendance.
No, listen, no. It's 70% to pass this class. Somebody got 65 and they were able to pass and not have to pay a reset fee of $150 because they attended Toastmasters. The difference between 89 and a 90 is an A and a B. Right?
Okay, so even though you emphasize Toastmasters and Rotary, which I will not go to, the
Anything
any
in,
other
yes.
events that is gonna have to
yeah,
be,
and you come back and share
and
with
come
the
back and
class.
share it with the
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Yeah, conferences, seminars, and then remember y'all were supposed to subscribe to where? The regulators, Gaming Board, Central Bank, Securities Commission, the Attorney General's Office, Bahamas Financial Services Board.
Okay, I wasn't there for that, so. I have some
Carla, help
reservations.
me out. Tell me who you supposed to subscribe to. Y'all I know all these things. Share.
All the regulators.
All the regulators.
But I ain't subscribed to mine, so it's Central
Securities Commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
Central Bank.
But the gaming board, like you said,
Securities Commission.
yeah, Security Commission.
Gaming board.
Bahamas
What's the
Financial
new one?
Services
Yeah,
Board.
yeah, that's fine.
The Compliance Commission is the regulator for the accountants, lawyers, and
Insurance.
Bahamas
right,
Financial
insurance.
Services Board. I also do things like Bloomberg and stuff because of my international.
Yeah, everybody should be getting Bloomberg and Yahoo Finance. Everybody, they free. Take advantage of this knowledge, and like you don't have to read it in detail every day, but these are the water cooler conversations that you have with the CEOs. These are they ain't gonna be saying who going to the concert, would we go wear to the dog, would we eat on Sunday. You know what I mean? Take me a picture and send it. They ain't gonna be talking about stuff like that. Right? So how you gonna maintain this conversation with this influential person? And you don't even know what's going on in your country. Or you could be like most people, just say a bunch of nonsense that don't make no sense and hope they don't know you don't know what you're talking about. A lot of people do that. Right? McCarty? You listening to me? You waking the back there? Okay, so the whole key thing is to read it.
What did they say? Yahoo?
Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg.
I just can't remember which one.
So just subscribe to them to your feed or, or to your email so they know that their newsletters and you have to keep current. And these things will help you make your decisions. Because you can't just start your research. This is the first time you're doing research the minute you're presented with a situation. You know what I mean? Because it'll take you hours. Trust me, hours and days. And like I say, my job was from 9 to 12. I had to shut off all my paperwork just to answer questions. Could I say, oh, I'm just doing the research? I don't even know what you're talking about. Cryptocurrency, never heard of it before. Let me go Google and see what cryptocurrency is. Oh, okay, this is what it is. Okay, these are the risks. No, you have to have some foundation. You have to know where to go. And as compliance too, you disseminate this information. Once you find something that is relevant to your institution, you share it with your company. You discuss it. When you go to these seminars, you come back and say, today the Attorney General's office had this seminar, this is what was discussed. This is what is happening in the Bahamas as they were blacklisted. This is why they were blacklisted. This is how we are gonna be removed from the blacklist. You think the CEO going to do that? No. When we got blacklisted, they was in our office. Why were we blacklisted? I don't know, at 7 o'clock in the morning, we just get blacklisted, 6 p.m. last night. 7 o'clock in the morning, what happened? Why did we get blacklisted? Oh, I don't know, we get blacklisted. I didn't even know we get blacklisted.
Go on.
So you gotta give a briefing and then you say, and the newspaper this morning says that there's gonna be an industry briefing. I'll attend it tomorrow. When you come from that industry briefing tomorrow, you get type in. These are the handouts, this is what they said, this is the plan. That's the expectation. And if you don't like these things, like I say, some things you do, you won't like everything. But you do it because you are motivated by either the money or the influence or the position, something. But this is what is required. So you have to make up in your mind that this is what I'm gonna do because this is what is required, not because I like it. Right? So, any questions? We good?
Sorry, I came late, but did you answer the questions about the exam? Did you say what the exam is gonna look like?
The exam 10 weeks from now. It just depends how this class goes and what happens. But basically, I think there are 8 chapters or 10 chapters. And so normally the exam, I think, you'll have 10 essay, 10 multiple choice, 10, 15 multiple choice, and a choice of 10 essay questions when you answer 7. we also had a mandatory question last year that was worth 20 points
That's the
on the Egmont
case.
group, yeah. And there was another, the people who had to do a resit, they took a test on, I think it was recommendation 24. That's a new one. We read in our class, in our intro class, that there was a mutual evaluation, and we could talk about the FATF in more in depth today. The FATF did a mutual evaluation. From that mutual evaluation, they realized that we were deficient in 22 of the 40 recommendations that were made from 2000 and yeah, that were updated in 2012. And so we had to put a plan in effect of how we were gonna update these recommendations. Right. So it just depends how it goes. So yeah, really, it's one question from each chapter, or some multiple questions, or multiple choice questions from the chapter. Right.
The registration spoke to a legal dictionary. How critical is that? How important it is?
Not absolutely necessary, because I bring a lot of handouts, and then with whatever we don't know, we go and research. We do the cheapest way to get through this. We call in our favors and we use our network. Yeah. See, we don't need, we call our lawyer who have the legal dictionary, and they go give us the answer. Right? Last year we also had a capstone because ICA moved away from testing an exam where you have the multiple choice and the essays, and they now require, they used to do 2 papers, 2,500 to 3,000 words, and 1 exam for AML and another for GRC, governance, risk and compliance, because there's 2 sections, 9 months of AML, 9 months of governance, risk and compliance. They've moved away from that, and now they give you 3 essays. So they normally give you like a month to do each essay. So last year, what we did is we said we are gonna try to move away as well from the exam and just do the capstone. That didn't work out. We were still required to do the exam and the capstone, and so that made this a little bit more overwhelming, right? But it was a good practice. It was good practice, but it made it very much more overwhelming, because what we do now is we give a quiz every week or every 2 weeks, depending on how it goes, to make sure that you're keeping abreast of what's going on. And normally what's on your quiz is going to be further developed into an essay question on your final exam. So normally on the quiz is a 2-point question, on the final exam it will be a 10-point question. So I normally recommend that you go and write about 10 points on the topic, the FATF, their task. Write down the 10 points, and then you go on the internet or in the book, do your research and put some meat in there, and you should end up with full points. And I saw that a lot of people did that in the intro exam. They had their points, they had their meat, and then when you could apply it to everyday life, and you could say the Nassau Guardian reported on blah 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 date, this is what happened, you even get more points, because that shows your true understanding. Okay? Yeah, so quiz next week on chapter 1. Okay? And we'll see how it goes for the first 3 chapters, and if everybody is doing well on the quizzes, then we'll probably combine like 3 chapters, and not have to have one every week. But for the first 3 weeks, we want to ensure that everybody reads, they study, they do research, and they understand. Okay? We good?
Yeah.
And so hopefully everybody comes on time, and so we could take the first 30 minutes of the class and do the exam. If we have to wait and give some person some extra time, then we will have it at the end of the class. If not, everybody is, we'll have to do the last 30 minutes. Right? But then people like to take it at the beginning, because, it's so much more, it's very comprehensive, so much more information will cloud your brain, so they like to take it at the beginning. So try your best to be on time, and we'll do the first 30 minutes. Okay, so everybody understands. We go home, we read, we come back and prepare to have a discussion. Now, I say that every class, and every class, we have to read the entire chapter. And then everybody complains, oh, we just read out the book. I have no problem talking. I know this book backwards out my head. And so I could talk this entire book, teach from it out my head. But persons is just look at me blind. Makari is being back there like, Miss Bullet, what Miss Bullet talking about? I don't know what the IMF is doing. I don't even know who the IMF is. Who's she talking about, right? And so therefore, that's why we just have to read. And then sometimes when we read our questions, because we do a scan over and we don't really understand that, but we don't have time to research that, so we can wait till class. So when we read, then, it jog our memory that I don't really know what they're talking about. So then you ask a question and then you get the understanding. So again, it just depends on how the class flows and what the commitment is. Are we gonna read? Are we gonna have discussions? When you read, and it talks about different case studies, or it talks about recommendation 1. Like that's what chapter 1 starts with. Will anybody go home and Google recommendation 1 and what has happened, how it's affected the Bahamas, what's going on, what's the current events? Anybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all will? Okay,
Yes.
so good. So we are gonna read entirely chapter 1 today. You're gonna have an exam, a pop quiz, no more than 10 questions next week. You may have 5. And then in your exam, I'm gonna put the questions so that I will know that if you went online to see exactly, tell me about a current event that's happening now concerning recommendation 1. Would y'all be able to ask? Because I don't want to set nobody up to fail. Should we wait till exam 2 or 3? Or y'all, I mean, especially the ones who've been to intro, they know better, they know. They've been doing their research, they've been reading the newspaper every day. They should be able to, just like this is familiar, the unexplained wealth order. Of course, if we cross over unexplained wealth orders, persons in intro could go and say, well, directly case, blah, 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 blah. Correct? McCarty and Troy and Kagal, we know about that, right? We can put that in our pop quiz. Right, and get good points. Okay, good. So we'll have a question from recommendation 1. There's a slight typo on August 13 on if you look at the schedule at the front, it says August 13, that is supposed to be August 3rd. I had called back and I told them that's the holiday weekend, August Monday, and normally persons travel, and so we try to avoid having class that week. And they were supposed to take that out, but instead of taking it out, they made it a 13 rather than the 3rd. So I don't know, but y'all can let me know.
So you're saying it's the 23rd?
Yeah, the Monday, but I mean, it's a holiday weekend, so normally if person's traveling, they go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so they won't be here Saturday, so we try to avoid all holiday scheduling, right? So anybody know that they're traveling now on that Saturday? See? Yeah, 1 person, so,
So there'll be no class on that date, isn't it? On the 3rd?
that's supposed to be the Saturday, the 3rd. Let me make sure it's the 3rd, it's the 3rd, right? Yeah, it's supposed to be the 3rd, so when I told them to take out the holiday, they put a 1 in front of it, I don't know why. But if it's only 1 person, like we had the Easter holiday weekend when like 7 persons were traveling, it didn't make sense, So if everybody else is fine, then we'll be here and we'll holiday after. Right, in Makati, have somebody from intro sitting right next to her. I'm sure they have numbers. I'm sure she will call her up and give her, And then this is being recorded too, so you can get the information from administration on how to watch it online. And anything extra, Makati, she will give it to you. Right? I call you Teachers Credit Union. What's your name? Dean. Okay, yeah, Dean. Right. Okay, so see how good it is when you have somebody's number and everything. Can just call you and keep you abreast of what's going on. Okay, we good? I talk enough? And no questions? Pardon?
August 10th.
What about August 10th? That's all that they do? Hmm?
I don't see that like, here.
Let me see what's going on. So okay, so that's what happened.
Oh, they got it.
She took out the 3rd and it's supposed to be the 10th. That's why she put the 1 there.
Oh, so it should be the 10th.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it is. So there will be no class then on the holiday weekend. That's what it is.
So what is it now?
So
So it's gonna be the 10th instead of the 13th.
Yeah, it's the 10th, yeah.
it's the 10th instead of the 3rd.
Yeah, so on the 3rd there will be no class, which is the holiday weekend. Yeah, cause we was asking her, and she was like, y'all get working out. I was trying to figure out what she did, and I was like, I know it was the holiday. Okay, good. Okay, so we see class participation is at 10%. The quizzes are 20%, and then the final exam is 70%. Overall, to pass the class, you have to have a combined total of 70%. Okay? So, we all know, just a little introduction, we all know what we use as our Bible, what we start with, where our policy and procedure comes from. Correct? We all work at banks? Okay, so, anyone, no, you don't work at a bank? Who's your regulator?
Please.
Okay. FIU? Okay, so the FIU has an act, right? But what I've seen, across the regulators is that central bank has guidelines. First, you know how laws are established. Somebody tell me. International bodies put out these recommendations.
Yeah, and then the government put in place the laws, and then the regulators dumb it down for organizations.
Yeah, and give guidelines, right? And so the guidelines so the laws are like, the FATF have 40 recommendations, so that should tell you that's already a lot. Plus 9 special ones for terrorism, that's 49 recommendations. So then from these 49 recommendations, countries then create their own laws. Remember now we did the mutual evaluation, we were deficient, our laws, again, a lot of these laws will wipe out the industry, the banking industry. Used to be 20% GDP, now it's 3%. We lost 17%, a lot because of regulation, and you know, other countries don't want us to be more competitive, taxes and all these different things, right? And so from these laws that they put in place, that 100, 200 pages, the regulator, central bank, securities commission, compliance commission, insurance commission, the gaming board, they give us a guideline. So across the regulators, I've seen that central bank guideline is like 91 pages. The Securities Commission took like 14 pages out of the central bank guideline and made it their guideline. But then the Securities Commission, they regularize like capital markets and securities, and so therefore they have other rules, right? And so the gaming board will have their guideline. So it depends on who your regulator is. So we call that guideline our Bible, because basically that's what we follow. And from that Bible, we then implement policy and procedure into our companies. Right? And we call it the compliance legislative matrix. We've heard that term before? No, I mean a lot of persons haven't heard about it, but we understand how it works. Okay, so you are the FIU, again, from these 40 recommendations, would have had to create their law, and then, for layman's terms, provide us with a guide. Right? Lots of information, very extensive. But we just trying to get the fine for tipping off and failing to disclose. We had to read that 3 times, right? You all ever read the laws? Okay, it's very hard to interpret, it's not in layman's terms, and this is why lawyers stay in business, because you have to call them up and say, what did this say? I just don't even know what you're trying to say, right? And so the guidelines try to interpret it so we know what they actually trying to say, right? And so that's why we follow the guidelines. Then on top of that, we have to implement our policy and detail it to our business. Like I worked in offshore at Royal, so we had securities as well as central bank. So the Securities Commission was our regulator as well as central bank. So I had the whole central bank guideline as well as the Securities Commission guideline. Luckily, they just copied some of the pages, but then the Securities Commission had a lot of rules that we had to follow as well. Okay, so it's important to know your regulator because you need to know who you're governed by, who you're regulated by, and what policies and procedures you should follow. Okay? So we understand where the policy comes from. Right? Okay. Any questions? Yours? Yeah, stop me, because it's confusing. Don't let me just ramble on and you don't know what I'm talking about, and you say, let me just sneak down this bullet and then you pop back up. Okay? It is happen. Don't tell me none of you others do that, nobody? No? Okay, good. So I always say the people that sit at the front want to read. They want to start, they want to get their 10% right away. So I remember them. Right? And I don't know your names, so I
Michelle.
forget if she's in here, I don't know. Right? So,
And Alberta.
Alberta.
And Michelle.
Alberta and Michelle, okay, I get your names right away. So Alberta and Michelle, to start to read for us. We can talk about
Which page?
page 5. Because y'all can read these other stuff. Just tells you what you should learn and
So you just
what
want us to
I
read out
study.
loud, you mean?
Yeah, read out loud and I will interject and give some examples. So we talk about, be on the same page.
Okay, so FATF and risk-based approach.
Right.
In 2013, the FATF published guidance on conducting national risk assessments as required by Recommendation 1.
Okay, and we all know who the FATF is now, right? The Financial Action Task Force. Okay, good.
Countries should identify, assess, and understand the money laundering and terrorist financing risk they face within a particular financial or non-financial business or profession.
And who is the NFBMP is who I always can't remember the acronym. Who are they? Yeah, and who are they? Who?
It's the compliance.
No, they are the lawyers, real estate and accountants.
Lawyers,
Real estates and accountants.
Give us the acronym.
state, is the
The acronym as well.
Non-financial business profession,
NFBOP,
BP,
BP,
yeah. NF, non-financial, yeah,
lawyers, real estate, and
accountants, yeah. And again, like I say, sometimes it's very comprehensive, I have a lot of information, I still have to do research, so if you have a question, I may not be able to answer right away for the most part, but I will answer by the next class, or I will send out an email, because I may need to do research, okay?
everyone is ready.
Mm-hmm.
The National Risk Assessment is intended to serve as the basis for the application of the risk-based approach within the private sector. It will also be used to determine higher and lower risk and assessing enhanced due diligence or simplified due diligence.
Okay, so do we understand what this really says? What recommendation 1 says is that you go, your country, first of all, because remember, it starts with the country, must assess the risk. What type of products and services do you offer? Do you offer trust accounts? Do you have correspondent banking? Do you deal with PEPs? Do you accept bearer shares? Once you say yes or no to those ones, the ones that you say yes to, you then say, what are my controls in place? How do I mitigate this control? This risk that we're taking on, right? So we start with our risk appetite. Yes, we do accept PEPs, right? Our control will be, if we accept a PEP account, normally accounts are approved by compliance. One control will be that
It's approved by board.
it's approved by the board. Another control will be that it's rated high risk. The next control is that we do enhanced due diligence, right? And, different stuff like that. So you just document it, yes, we accept PEPs, this is what we do, these are our controls, okay? Bearer shares, a lot of companies no longer take bearer shares. Again, what is your control? Central bank guidelines say there must be a letter of undertaking from the holder of the share, as well from the beneficial owner of the share. This is my control. Okay? So you do a national risk assessment on the country itself, right? And I think we are behind. And the importance of this national risk assessment is this is how our country is rated. Remember I said when we borrow, it depends, we are borderline high risk, and if we go high risk, if we go from medium to high, then we will borrow at a higher rate. There will be enhanced due diligence required versus simplified due diligence. And can you imagine enhanced due diligence for a country? Background checks on all the politicians to see if there are any corruptions, to see, how extensive that would be, okay, on a wide scale. So, in essence, in our financial institutions, the same thing is done. So, recommendation one been in, this recommendation one, so this been in place from 2000, right? We can look at the FATF at 40 recommendations at the back. But again, it wasn't enforced. So there are two risk assessments that's done in the financial services sector. One is the AML risk assessment. The next one is an enterprise-wide risk assessment. And so from our mutual evaluations, it was found out that whilst it was in place, it wasn't being enforced, right? And about 2 or 3 years ago, Central Bank created an analytics department where they assigned, and the Securities Commission, where they assigned relationship manager to each financial institution. And so now that person now monitors to make sure that these things are being done. So every year, I think they say 120 days after the start of the year, the risk assessment the AML risk assessment must be done. This year, I think it was June 22nd that they said it had to be in. And so there were lots of seminars, lots of letters coming out from the regulator to say this year it has to be done, and it has to be done properly. I attended a seminar where we asked them, okay, fine, y'all didn't enforce this before, it's being enforced now, give us a template. Then they said they don't have a template because you have to tailor it to your business. So there wasn't a lot of support, you know what I mean? So basically you had to go back, go to your bank, create this control library, send it to them, and they would tell you whether or not it was sufficient or not.
Can I tell you whether or not it's sufficient? They don't know they're looking for to be able to grade it.
They
That's
know.
what it
See,
is.
okay. Let me tell you what happened. From the mutual, that FATF did the mutual evaluation. Then the IMF came in here, and they noticed the deficiencies, and basically they said you have to beef up certain sectors. The national risk assessment was done in 2015, but it was done without the accountants being regulated. And that's recommendation 7 or 8 that says they have to be regulated. So think about it. Remember now, in 2000 we just put in the shell because we needed to come off the blacklist. But the government had to weigh it out. When I put all of this regulation in, this will make my country now less competitive. We are a tax haven. So there really isn't no offshore banking if we put all these things. If you still have to pay the tax at home, why would you send your money to the Bahamas? So, the government say, listen, we could put it in to be compliant, They could take a while before they come and realize that we really don't have no meat. That was 2000, this 19 years later, they saying y'all don't have no meat. We say it was in 2018 or 2017, y'all don't have no meat, y'all must now do it. You see what I mean? So we got away with the shell for 18 years. And now they enforcing it. Now the light is on us and they saying no, we making sure that you all put these things in place. Hence they beefed up all the laws, the FTRA, FTRR, Terrorist Act, all of those were updated in 2018. They completely revamped and repealed, not just amended, because there's normally an amendment to the act. But no, they completely repealed all of them and put all the meat that the FATF 40 recommendations required to be in there. They put it in the laws. Right? And so what happened in 2019? Accounting firms that were licensed, when they went for their business license in 2019, they were told, you must register with the Compliance Commission. I don't know what the Compliance Commission is. you must have a compliance officer on board. How much a compliance officer could cost? Minimum $50,000. This is an approved function. This person have to have at least 5 years experience. This person have to have the ICA designation. This person, so guaranteed, that person can accept $50,000. Some people was asking for $70,000 and $80,000. Think about you, a little law firm who, if you own a Higgs and Johnson, use a bullet and go. You cannot get licensed without this compliance on board and without being registered to the compliance commission. You think the registration to the compliance commission was free? I can't tell you how much it costs, but y'all can imagine how much a bank fee costs to be registered with the central bank. So what happened to the real estate companies who come talking, I'm a compliance officer? Now we don't do none of that. The only thing we just know is the person name and how they could pay. Now you telling me I must find out where they live, let them give me a bill, and I must ask them all their personal information. I must know my customer who just buying a piece of property, and again, I only on commission. And if I make this person angry, that's my $10,000 commission manager. I can't ask these people that question. And I don't know if y'all ever, I work in wealth management with high net worth persons. To open up an account with us was $250,000. You had to have a network of 5 million, or that account wasn't approved. You don't ask them nothing more than because you trying to keep that business. So what the real estate people could do? We didn't even have, they don't have no form to fill out. They only want to know your name and how you could pay. So now, I need to hire somebody to fill out this form. I need to hire a vetter. I need to create a form. I need to print these forms, that's ink and paper. No, for truth, that's overhead. So there's 2 to 3 salaries.
So sorry to interrupt you because I've been in the banking space for a short period of time. So you're basically saying that all of these requirements that have been put in place based on the revamping of the laws prior to that.
Not for the banks.
Well,
The banks had it in from 2000.
okay,
The real estate
but for the
accountants,
non-professionals.
yes, they
Okay.
just got it last year.
Okay.
Right, so
So
when they
prior-
came to license this year,
Uh-huh.
they could not get licensed unless they had all of this in place.
Did the person have to be full-time?
Well, they say I don't know if it has to be full time. It depends on the size of your business, and right now it's a market out there because you could have a compliance officer shared if you're a certain size. Let's say you only have 50 clients. I could be a compliance officer for 3 accounting firms that have like 50 clients, or 3 law firms, or 3 real estate companies, right? But cost, and what is normally why businesses out is cost, right? Right, but all of this was enforced. Not only was that enforced, now they have to do a risk assessment of their business. And that had to be in by June 22nd. So again, everybody was scrambling. Because normally in institutions, there's a there's a compliance officer who does the risk function and the compliance function. And they created a whole function now, or the risk, doing that assessment, and then the enterprise-wide assessment. Because the enterprise-wide assessment is due in October. That means you have to go and sit with the credit department and find out all the risks in credit and document it and complete a risk assessment for credit. One for operations, one for IT. Are we as compliance officers fully trained in IT to be able to make them compliant? To know that they are compliant? Y'all ever work with IT professionals? I mean, I always have a very, very bad experience. For me personally.
Must communicate with
Yes. So think about that. And now by October, you have to get them to do something that they have never done before. And not only them, the entire bank, HR, operations, IT, credit. If you never work in credit, you don't know nothing about credit. Right? And you think a lot of banks now say, oh, this has to be done. You look in the newspaper, there was few positions for risk officers, but not that many. The paper wasn't crowded, flooded with it. So where did this drop? On the already overwhelmed compliance department, right? And they just say, but you're always supposed to be making sure that the bank is compliant anyway. And you do have some documentation, but now it has to be sent to the regulator and annually. We get this?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me what I say, somebody.
So that the industry is now a lot more stressful than it was.
Before, tell me.
Basically that you had certain industries that weren't prepared for a very sudden shift in their business dynamic, and they had to compensate some other way to make the deadline to be compliant in order to continue in business. And so far, the market for compliance officers have not been properly prepped or trained to handle the burden they've been faced with in the industry. And now we're gonna make a lot of money by knowing how to be compliant
Yeah.
and extending our services to several companies, smaller companies,
Yeah.
and making coin. That's what I got from that.
Yeah, and so no more slap on the wrist and that's okay, they know.
Yeah.
There are fines now attached to where if your risk assessment isn't in on the particular date, it's
For the
supposed to be.
company and individual.
Yeah. Okay, so be prepared when you take these positions. Questions to ask, how many clients do you know, how many clients do you have? There's a big difference when you have 50 versus 500. What's your growth strategy over the next 5 years? If they say, oh, our salespeople are aggressively working and we trying to open up 1,000 more accounts, don't, you know, then you need staff. But it's very common that they throw one person in. Do you have risk versus compliance? No, you don't.
I have a question relating to that. What is the compliance regulator done in terms of training the existing compliance officers, now be risk officers, if they're gonna be now forced to be dual capacities? In most larger companies, you're gonna have a separate risk. and
Larger,
compliance person,
yeah, but if
larger,
you work in
who can
the-
afford it,
yeah.
who can focus on the larger scale of it. Now,
Mhm.
what, apart from, I mean, seminars, I don't know if that included that, what are they doing now to train existing compliance officers to also be risk, or is that even something that
With,
they
with
wanna
all
do?
companies, you're supposed to have a development plan, that's the first thing. A development plan for yourself on your performance appraisal.
Mhm.
So you are supposed to tell the company what courses, wow, you are gonna stay abreast, right? When these industry, when the regulator having a seminar, you can't say that you too busy, you ain't going. Because the entire bank waiting on you to come and tell them what happened at the seminar, right? And the bank only can pay for 1 or 2, 3 persons the most to go. You have to come back and do a training on what you learned. Okay, so you better attend those seminars and don't let the CEO come and say what happened at the seminar or the board. And you say, oh, I didn't have time to make it. You didn't make it, so where are the slides? And remember now, you reporting directly to the board. They want, you have to advise them. You know, and the board is just there, but they delegate all their powers to the compliance department or the risk department or some committee, the AML committee or something like that. So they don't normally make decisions. You advise the board. And when once you're making decisions on their behalf, you have to explain to them how you got to your decision. You attended this seminar, this what happened, this is what you said, these are the slides. You responsible for that AML training now. So if you don't have a trainer on board, you're doomed again. Because most of the time HR say, well, I don't even know what to do, nothing about AML. You have to hold this whole training yourself. And any other training that's needed where, you know. So like I say, it's a very heavy position. Everything that nobody else want to do falls on compliance. Every time audit comes in and said there's a deficiency in this department, that position now, compliance has to monitor it. So, do you have the bodies? You normally don't.
How do you determine the amount of compliance officers you would need in, I guess, a company or an environment?
Okay, you have to create some metric, right? When we was at Royal Bank, everybody always overworking on the staff, right? But, and you normally have to fight to get an extra body. But this is what you say. Where at Royal Bank, we said each sales officer had 100 low or medium clients. Each senior officer had 50 high-risk clients, because of course, enhanced due diligence, more monitoring, more, right. Each officer had 2 operational persons, and each compliance officer was responsible for like 300 accounts. So these 300 accounts, whatever happened, and of course all the high risk, And then you have some, so you have 25% or 50% high risk, 25 low, and 25 medium, like that. Because you have to put a metric in place, like, the officer can't, you expected to know your client, so it's supposed to be a relationship. Hey, Miss Bullet, how you doing? How the kids? This and that. All of that takes time. So you have to have a good HR, or your bank have to have a good framework, and most banks don't. And so, or you have to recommend that they put something in place, because you will be overwhelmed. And if you're responsible for these 300 clients, you will know your client. You see what I mean? But I was at an institution where we knew the client better than the relationship manager, and every time something happened, he was like, oh, yeah, I was in Spain, and I was in Italy, and I don't have time for this. So we always had to advise him. Your customer has been doing some unusual transactions. Your customer was arrested. This happened, that happened, what happened. So there has to be a metric. You have to divide your customers.
If central bank comes in and they do their examination process and they look at your structure and your number of clients and how many high risk and low risk clients you have, are they in a position to recommend and say that
They
you
do.
need to have
They do.
additional compliance officers?
Yeah. Because I worked externally and we audited like a Scotia Bank, and we said this one person in the compliance has 4 functions that are too heavy. There's no way this person can do policies and procedures or the regulatory matters, and you'll have 15,000 accounts. There's no way. And so audit, and they played around with it. Okay, by the summer we'll hire some student. No, the person have to be at a senior level, have to, you know what I mean? They do all kind of foolishness, and then they got a regulatory visit, and immediately they hired the person.
Also, to what extent should internal audit be involved in compliance related matters? How separate should it be? How
Well, there are 3 lines of defense, and that should be implemented in most of your institutions, where the first line of defense is the front line and the supervisors and the managers. The second line of defense is compliance. The third line of defense is internal audit.
okay.
So that's outside. Hi, come. Okay. Yeah. So that's how it should be set up. But again, like I say, a lot of times everything falls into compliance. You know what I mean? And you just have to push and you have to organize, and sometimes you even have to force these persons to do their jobs. And that's why I recommend that every time somebody is hired, compliance reviews that mandate. Because you have to mandate these people to write policy and procedure. You have to mandate them that their department must be compliant. You now have the mandate. Could you imagine with compliance officers going through this year, trying to convince the credit department that they have to do a risk assessment on the credit department? You tell me what that loan officer saying. Listen, if I don't bring in these sales, nobody can get paid. I on the road. You have to do this and tell me what you need from me. So could you imagine the pushback and all what they going through? But again, this ain't the doom and gloom report. This just so you would know and how to prepare yourself. And nothing in life easy and anything, that's why make sure that you're adequate and pay it. Most times you won't be, but know what you're getting into, because there's a big, we go to these banks and we say, oh, this is a small boutique bank with 5,000 clients. What are the metrics? Who is responsible for what? You can't expect, if my relationship manager don't know there are 100 clients, how am I gonna manage 300? When I have to tell them who these people are and do all the screenings and the backgrounds and the checks and what have you. Okay? So just organize yourself and know up front. Get the proper training. If they say, we'll use the compliance officer and use the only person on the ground, send me to your parent company in Switzerland, Spain, wherever it is. I need this training. Go, and compliance is required to go out and meet, like anybody who we offering a correspondent banking to. We had some customers in Antigua and Barbuda, and people, I ain't going there. No, you have to go and meet them and find out who their structure is, see if this really a bank and not a share bank, And then you say, what does the regulator do? The regulator saw that there was too much influence, that compliance wasn't independent, and so now They also made it mandatory that once a year you come and meet confidentially with, I don't know if it's the governor or probably whoever's here, relationship manager, and this is where you say, listen, some really shady things going on. You all have to come in and help me. Because, they ain't really doing what they're supposed to do. Nobody following the rules. They just tell me what to do. When I tell them no, an account is opening, they still opening. Because I was at a bank that was closing down, and we were hired just to keep it open. And when Central Bank came in, they said, we understand that compliance rejected some accounts and a special committee approved this account. Please pull those 10 files. And they got a fine for that, because if compliance says no, you don't go form no special committee. The CEO and an association, it don't work like that. So these are the type of things that when you go to your confidential meeting, if you was afraid to just pick up the phone and say, hey,
So what's the
But
pushback with that? Because after they bring some sort of light to it,
what do you
obviously,
mean, what's the pushback?
in terms of for the officer itself, after you would have said that you have the same confidence to the regulator, right, and when they come in,
Well, see, it depends. If you was at a Royal Bank, I would call a regulator. At a little boutique bank where there's this the owner of the bank who doing all this, I just say, okay, me and you ain't on the same page,
No.
so I just leave and find something else. But the Royal Bank or Scotia or International Bank,
you
no,
definitely.
they can't get away with stuff like that, and they large enough for you to move around. You know what I mean? Or they will definitely they can't get away with stuff like that. They too big to fail, like they too big to
That's good.
do stuff like that, the JP Morgans and stuff.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's good if you have a good relationship with the boutique bank, but they way more risky. When you work in offshore, it's very volatile. You have to know that every 2 years you're ready to start over again. 3 years the most, especially if you're in management. But you make $80,000-$100,000 and you start over again. Now, if you want more security, you could go to the retail bank and make $60,000 and you stay there for 13 years. It's really up to you. But if you want to make money, if you say, I in my 30s, I trying to get my house or whatever, I can do this till I 40 and then I can look for stability. It really depends on you. Yeah. But it depends. So some people can't deal with uncertainty avoidance. I mean, or they they stay on one job. If they making $18,000 a year, they stay there for 30 years. Because they sure about that government job, eh? So it depends on you. But very volatile. If you could stop and start over, because like I say, I was at a bank that was closing down. I only was there to keep the bank open until the new buyers came. The new buyers came and they was at another level. You know what I mean? So it really was. When they offered me a job, I stayed because I said this bank was in such dilemma. I had to create so much policy and procedure. I just didn't feel like starting over right then. But then the longer you stay, the worse they got. So then, yeah. So it depends on you. Okay, so we understand recommendation 1. And we definitely go on to read about what the banks and the DMF BPs had to do. There's all sorts of, every week there was something in the newspaper about recommendation 1 and it being enforced here. Central Bank was sending out reminders that it had to be in, right? And it had to be in on June 22nd, and a lot of people who were scrambling, like the whole industry was scrambling, so I sure Central Bank tends to be very lenient. Just like when all the laws came into place in 2000, they sent out, this the last, this a last reminder, whatever. They gave us a year, like 2 and 3 years afterwards. Hey, how you doing? Good. Yeah, so they gave us, chances after chances. So they might be so lenient now because internationally we being watched. But if you definitely didn't get it and you definitely don't know what to do, you could pick up the phone and call them and they will help you out. Especially now from that analytics department, where you have your own personal relationship manager. So don't just sit there and be too afraid, the people to say you don't know what you're doing. No, you don't know. But you will learn, right? That's how it will work. Okay, so we clear, recommendation one. Good? Good, okay.
Once completed, national authorities will consider how broad the results are to be disseminated among stakeholders, as it may be too sensitive for public disclosure.
And remember now, this at the country level, so who will be doing our national risk assessment? So Compliance Commission, Securities Commission, Insurance Commission, the Gaming Board, Central Bank, everybody has a stake in it, so could you all imagine now, and before, the Compliance Commission just getting established, I just regulating them now, so I don't even know what type of risk, I could just document the norm, so imagine the whole country trying to get together. And then big government agencies, could you imagine why it ain't been done from 250 and 260, yeah? You all know that, right? Yeah. Okay.
It is envisioned that national risk assessments should be made available to the private sector to assist with addressing new and emerging threats and current AML CFT PF risk.
And we know what that AML CFT PF is? Proliferation financing. Okay, so they talking about it on a national level, and then of course it disseminated down to the financial institutions. Even all the number houses have to do a risk assessment. So could you imagine?
Oh my God.
And a guy in my class who was the compliance officer, he said, Ms. Bullitt, I have a one-pager. There you have to tell me. And knowing that the gaming board, like 10 years behind the central bank, it take them a while before they say, I do something wrong, so I winging it. I say, well, oh, sorry, Mr. Central Bank, sorry. Don't tell them that, this is recorded. No. But again, that's what he doing, he checking the boxes, and he sending it in, because he hoping with hopes that they ain't got, but there are only 10 licensees on the gaming side, so,
Different section.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's what I said, only 10 gaming house licensees, they in like 400 or 500 banks, where central bank is gonna be overwhelmed, but not 10 licensees. Yeah, he mightn't get away for so long. He ain't got that 19 years, like the country had 19 years.
Maybe 2.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, good, so we understand that, all right.
Why knowledge of international initiatives and developments is important. AML, CFT, PF professionals should be aware of important international developments and the strategies and standards on which their domestic AML, CFT, PF laws and strategies are based. A country risk assessment is now an important requirement, and those countries that do not fully adopt the international standards will be judged accordingly. Memberships of the Financial Action Task Force alone does not guarantee that a jurisdiction can be regarded as having a robust AML CFT PF regime.
Okay, and so, of course, we had those 22 that were deficient, we put in an action plan, and when they come back, hopefully 19 years later, and say, we didn't do what we supposed to do, then they can blacklist us again. But hopefully, we do what we supposed to do this time, because this is the most compliant I've ever seen, we have been.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Knowledge of the circumstances in which certain relationship and transactions can expose an organization and its employees to the jurisdiction and laws of other countries is also important. Such awareness should enable the AML CFTPF function to influence and apply enhanced due diligence measures and controls where appropriate.
And of course, not only blacklisting, but they may say, we automatically make you all high risk. And of course, we know the repercussions of that. We don't want that to happen, right? And so, yeah.
International and regional bodies in PF, the AML CFT arena. It is important to understand that regional bodies in the AML CFT PF arena for the following reasons. The AML TF PF risk represented by other countries, customers from other countries, and transactions with other countries. punitive, remedial, or reactionary developments in respect of other jurisdictions which may affect your business, likely trends and changes internationally that may affect the AML CFT-PF framework in which you operate.
So if something happens in America, of course that will affect us because that's our correspondent banking.
Right.
If we have a large Venezuelan book, Venezuela is heavily sanctioned right now. Now, the US can't put a sanction on us because we are the Bahamas. But really, if the US says, stop all business with, or they put so many sanctions in place because, you know, all the wiring goes to the US and they sanction Venezuela, can we really stand up against them and say, you can't put the sanction on us? No, we have to follow suit, right? So you have to pay attention to this if you work in the international field, you know, and the different countries that are affected, okay?
International expectations of your firm and lead jurisdiction in addition to domestic AML, CFT, PF requirements, any emerging typologies you may encounter, sources of additional best practice or practical responses on problematic areas.
Okay, and just to like gaming, before gaming was regularized, they were able to have accounts at all the Canadian banks. After it was regularized and it's now legal, the Canadian banks say it's too risky. They don't even take money services businesses because they say that would make the bank high risk and they are too cash intensive. So and that's Canadian. The other day, somebody won a case here because Royal Bank has made accounts joint with right of survivorship. They say if you open up an account, it's joint with right of survivorship. Somebody, it took them 10 years to win a case, and they won it based on Royal Bank can implement any policy they want. However, it cannot stand up in the law because joint with right of survivorship is in Canadian law and not in Bahamian law. And so therefore that person won that case based on Canadian law being enforced through the bank. But you can't enforce it through the law, you can enforce it in the bank. You could say this is my bank policy, but if it ain't gonna hold up in court, why would you make it your bank's policy? You get that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
The most important and influential of the supranational bodies is the Financial Action Task Force. FATF is an intergovernmental body whose purpose is to establish international levels to combat money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons. The FATF meets several times a year and brings together legal, financial, and law enforcement experts from more than 30 countries and a range of international bodies. Its purpose is to develop and promote national and international strategies and to seek to generate the necessary political will to bring about national legislative and regulatory reforms to combat money laundering and terrorist financing.
And this again is a very popular question, their task, more in depth, more in detail.
Okay. The FATF undertakes a range of tasks. One, there's no one there, there's no one there. It identifies and analyzes money laundering, terrorist financing, and other threats to the integrity of the financial system, including the methods and trends involved, examining the impact of measures designed to combat misuse of the international financial system, supporting national and global threats, and risk assessment. Number two, it develops and refines the international standards for combating money laundering and the financing of terrorism and proliferation. Number three, it assesses and monitors its members through peer reviews, mutual evaluations, and a follow-up process to determine the degree of technical compliance, implementation, and effectiveness of systems for combating money laundering and the financing of terrorism.
And assessment and mutual evaluation is online, you can Google it and you can see the type of recommendations. Either July 2017 or 2018, you just put FATF, mutual evaluation for the Bahamas, and you will see where they said this is deficient, and how they came up with the 22 deficiencies that we read about in the newspaper.
And that's mutual evaluation.
Yeah, very long, it's for 200 pages, so just scan it, so you'll see and know how it looks. Because again, to answer that question on recommendation 24 and beneficial ownership registry, it said, what did the Bahamas do, right? To correct this deficiency. And where else do you find out what the Bahamas do? For online and in this mutual evaluation, where you start with the FATF said this is why it was deficient and this is how it was deficient. The records must be accessible. We want to establish a beneficial ownership registry. They created an act, and then this is what they did to correct it, right? And all of that in that evaluation too, to say where the deficiencies were. Okay.
It identifies and engages with high-risk, non-cooperative jurisdictions and those with strategic deficiencies in their national regimes, and coordinates action to protect the integrity of the financial system against the threat posed by them. It promotes full and effective implementation of the FATF recommendations by all countries through the global network of FATF-style regional bodies and international organizations. It responds as necessary to significant new threats to the integrity of the financial system, consistent with the needs identified by the international community, including the United Nations Security Council, G20, and the FATF itself. It assists jurisdictions in implementing financial provisions of the United Nations Security Council resolutions on proliferation, assessing the degree of implementation and effectiveness of these measures in accordance with FATF mutual evaluation. It assists jurisdictions in implementing financial provisions of the United Nations Security Council resolutions on non-proliferation, assessing the degree of implementation and effectiveness of these measures in accordance with the FATF mutual evaluation and follow-up process.
We understand fully what proliferation is? Proliferation of weapons financing, we know what that is, weapons of mass destruction and what have you. Okay, so what you saying, it assists jurisdictions in implementing financial provisions. What that mean? We can lend you some money, right? Or we can send you to the people, we can support you or back you up so you can borrow this money, right? Right? To implement this, put this framework in place to make sure that North Korea or nobody infiltrate your financial system, right? Okay.
That's right.
Because, when you need to borrow money, sometimes, like the Chinese, the Chinese want to give us $170 billion to build this port. But then they acquired Guatemala's port, 3 countries in Africa, and what have you. And so when they lend us this $170 million, we collecting VAT, but do we pay? Do we pay bills?
They building their own port.
Okay, so they build their own port. So in 3 years, when we can't pay back $170 billion, because we never know where the VAT money going, now they own our port.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Okay? Which is probably 20% of the revenue that we getting into this country every day. Every tourist, how many 1-point-something million tourists come in every year? They paying that $15. Most of that coming from the cruise ships, because 2,500 people could come on a cruise ship a day on each ship, and it's be like 7 ships out there. So, okay, and any other tax, the cruise ship pay and all of that would be going to them. If they could invest $170 billion, they obviously making double or more on it, right? So in 3 years, we ain't gonna pay that bill, and they just go acquire it, and so it'll be theirs.
along with some other things.
Oh, but they already have.
Already out there on
And
the, on the-
again, people was upset the other day when remember we talk about this, the Prime Minister went to talk to Donald Trump about the influence that China has on the Bahamas and all these investments that we taken from them,
Yes.
right? Hence the American embassy, the Chinese built this big,
monstrosity.
the point,
And
and
you
now
can
the
see.
embassy moving.
Mhm.
Don't take that lightly,
That's
you know,
right.
because they believe that they spying
They are.
on them right there, so they move in. But they want the Bahamas to know that, don't let China have all this influence over you. Because once you owe people money,
Yep.
they kind of your master.
Yes.
And we talking about billions, yeah. Okay, so this is why you need to be abreast of this deal and what's going on. Because it affect us in 5-10 years, we have a very big problem if we take this money from them. And I think they done get all the go-aheads and all the signing of this deal, and it's a go, right? No, it ain't a go? Make sure it ain't.
And they asked us what we want.
Yeah, what
They put us
people
part of
they doing?
WTO, and I had nobody said they want to be a part of WTO
They've,
yet.
that WTO from 20 years ago, they've been talking about that. I don't think that got really happened. Again, see, it's international pressures. You have to do, we too small to be more competitive than a Switzerland. That's the whole thing. You see what I mean? So they find ways to wipe us out. You know what I mean? And then they blacklist us. Like I say, the OECD, Peter Turnquest really made a hiccup with the OECD, where he said, the more I put in place, the more laws I put in place, you shutting down my sector, and Bahamians losing jobs, and every time I come back, you still blacklisting me for something else. And so he is really adamant with them. He was really on them and say, the more I do, the more you come up with, right? And so basically they say, okay, we don't want you to feel that way, Mr. Bahamas. And so we won't blacklist you any longer. And then guess what they did? They then went to the European nations and said, you can blacklist the countries yourself. So then the Netherlands, while the OECD that represents like 30 countries, it isn't gonna blacklist us. They recommended the 30 countries blacklist
So they
us.
found another way.
They found another way. So Peter Turnquest cannot say his step. So immediately, and again, he probably was from the Netherlands, or if you do his research, you'll see he has some connection. The guy who he was back and forth with, the Netherlands immediately blacklisted us, and a couple other European countries saying they blacklisted us. So now he, instead of going to the OECD, now he negotiating back and forth with the Netherlands, and then he'll be with Iceland and with Germany
So
and with this.
So what they're doing is distracting him because they probably putting something else in place. While he's distracted with all this,
Yes.
time, he's gonna be tired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so when we had these things in the news, don't just, people always politicize it and say PLP and FNF. No, really pay attention, and there's always a bigger picture,
Yeah.
Everybody, you've been minister down there with Donald Trump, blah, 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 blah. I don't support Donald Trump, but he needed to have that conversation, because that's why Obama created FACA. Obama said, before I borrow more money and I bow to the Chinese, I'm gonna fix my tax problem in my country. And he fixed his tax problem. Okay? Where I was working, that affected me, but I understood that you let these Chinese take over America now, you don't. Even America, very bullish, and you do what they say, or they, but I still think you're better than the Chinese. So just lesser, two great evils. You know what I mean? So
That's what I heard. I heard the American telling us not to be friends with Chinese because America wants to continue their influence over us. They don't want, and that's what they do in a lot of countries. You know what I mean?
yeah, but who?
But I prefer-
Be too small. So
Yeah.
who you prefer to influence to come from the
We can
Chinese?
influence. We could have business agreements, but don't be influenced by these
Yeah, but
countries.
we
You know what I
too
mean?
small to have
too
a say.
small.
We too small to have a say. We don't have no natural resources. We don't have no food source. If America say, don't send no food to Nassau,
That's it.
we don't. That's it. We starve.
But we really didn't want to eat the Chinese.
No, there you go.
They want
Chinese
Chinese
boats
food.
will be coming in here
And we
like
don't eat their
crazy.
food.
But Chinese,
Plastic.
China is a communist country. That's what we gotta remember. When you go and speak out against the government, you go to jail. You see Reynard them in Russell Square writing up, but you gotta go ask permission to go in Russell Square when you wanna have a, protest.
Protest, yeah.
When you write that letter and say, I want to go in China Square to have a protest, you get arrested, espionage, treason, and all them different things, 20 years in jail, if they don't kill you. You don't know that?
No, I know.
Okay. You ever seen that Chinese army?
And they believe
Yeah,
in,
point.
they believe in work,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. So, all their jails full. All these people who come in here, billing is prisoners, you know that? That's why they can't mix. That's 10 years hard labor. They're sentenced, that's why they can't come out in the community and mix with us. You don't see no little Chinese, black Chinese baby running around here, right? You can't, they prisoners. They don't suppose they are in jail, but the prisons in China are full, and so they go to countries around the world, and that's how you don't have to pay bill a prison to hold all these
They're
people.
so smart.
And you make money from them.
And you make money.
That's
You say,
genius.
let me give you a stadium.
We can do that for our prison. Yeah, that's all.
Who would
And,
think
and,
that?
and they're not
Really
trying to
good.
even run, like, they're not trying to even like jump on the boat and try to run to the
No, because
island.
they in paradise. They get to go across the road to the beach. If you go on the beach, beaches like around 6 o'clock, they flooded on wherever they live. They flooded on the beach. That's paradise. Then where they can run to? You ever see pictures? I never been to China, but you only never see the pictures of the smog where you have to wear in all the
wear the mask.
factories
You have to wear the
and
mask.
billions of people, and you used to only could have one child. Now you could have two, because they done disperse enough people around the world. So
And they're having challenges with having two, because one of my colleagues from China, he said that so many people went and tied their tubes when they said they couldn't have one.
yeah, because
That
you
now
would
that
have gone
they're
to
trying to
jail.
force people to have two,
Yeah,
and they actually can't, so the population is very aged
yeah,
now.
yeah.
I heard they have a very large disparity between men and women now, because everybody want a plus one and a boy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything's around the world that there's more women than men, but because of China alone, there are actually more men than women.
Yes.
And you're gonna have like several million men, Chinese men,
Yeah.
they don't marry outside their
Cut
culture,
away, they're not going
who
to.
can't find wives,
Wow.
because there's more men than women.
Well, they'll probably break that then, yes.
Or do
They're
some
trying
kind of
to.
polygamous situation where you have one wife, 3 husbands.
Yeah, yeah.
But it'll bring dishonor on their families and all that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, like I say, when you hear the news, do some research so you know what's really going on, and don't make it a FNM PLP type of situation. There's a lot of things we have to do to protect the country. Because, it's in the best interest of the country, and it's just, that's the government put in place right now, just like with the VAT going up 12%. When we signed on to VAT, we asked them to stagger it. We said in the 3 years, we will raise it to the 12%. They want us to have it to 15% because Barbados, most people in the countries in the Caribbean, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
15%. So they don't want us to be more competitive than the other countries. So therefore, I don't know if we agreed. I'll have to do some research to read. But I know we did agree that in 3 years, it would have been raised. So if the PLP had won, it would have raised
It would have raised
anyway.
anyhow.
But of course, they use that for the
Politics.
uneducated masses
Yeah,
and on their campaign trail to say, see, they raised VAT and whatever, and now the FNM is saying, well, not in this term will we ever raise VAT again. Because they know in the next 5 years or whatever, it's not required. You know, so don't just listen to the noise in the market. Because half of the time it's half of the story you're wrong. You know, look at the bigger picture.
It engages and consults with the private sector and civil society on matters relating to the overall work of the FATF. It undertakes new tasks agreed by its members in the course of its activities and within the framework of its mandate, and takes on new tasks only where it has a particular additional contribution to make, while avoiding duplication of existing efforts elsewhere. FATF recommendations. The first 40 developed in 1990 have been revised 3 times, 1996, 2003, and February 2012. The FATF recommendations were revised to strengthen global safeguards and further protect the integrity of the financial system by providing governments with stronger tools for taking action against financial crime. The recommendations also focused on new priority areas such as corruption and tax crime. The key updates were in the following areas: more appropriate use of a risk-based approach, improving transparency around legal and beneficial ownership of legal entities, more rigorous requirements for information on wire transfers, increased global cooperation between international authorities, tracing, freezing, confiscation, and repatriation of illegal assets. The
In a lot of banks, there were like layers and layers and layers that they create to hide who the ultimate beneficial owner is. And when central bank came in, or even audit, there was a lot of notes on the customer due diligence is insufficient. We have shareholders registry, but then we saying Bullet and Co. own these shares. But who is Bullet and Co.? Right? Bin Laden first cousin. Right? So what happened now is they say you can't accept, you could accept the share registry with that Bullet, that company's name on it, but you should have a nominee agreement in place. And a lot of times, I mean, it depends on at Royal Bank, again, I said the Canadians are very more conservative and on point, and they try to be more strict than the regulators. The Swiss banks, oh no, you have no nominee agreement. You don't know who sending this wire, who this money for. You know what I mean? So they had to do a lot of updating where they went out and got those nominee agreements, and the nominee agreement would say, I hold this share, I am Bullet and Co., and I hold this share for Bin Laden. You see? Did you think about the bank was about to, that account had to be closed, had to be, you know what I mean? And then there were a lot of bearer shares, and like I said, a lot of countries stopped accepting and issuing bearer shares. And so we had a lot of Panama accounts. And about 2 years ago, Panama stopped issuing bearer shares. So we had to call in all those persons and say, listen, your country no longer accepts, even though we accept bearer shares, your country doesn't do it anymore. So we have to regularize all these accounts. And that was that was messy. That was very, very messy.
I have a question. I work for a Swiss bank, right? And Swiss banking culture seems to be the standard of private banking, blah, 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 so on and so
Because
forth.
they say so.
Right,
Because they
that's
say
my
they are
question.
the
That's my
standard.
question. So now, when people are so shocked, because Swiss people don't bank anywhere else, they bank in Switzerland, and everybody else banks in Switzerland, right? Or with a Swiss bank.
I think Switzerland has been bankrupt for many, many, many years. Google it. I could be wrong, but they say they are the creme de la creme, but they are not.
Right. So here's my thing: if would they have a reputation of that whole secure banking secrecy, you're not going to find out. They're going to hold tight to it. How come they're not blacklisted? Why are they holding the Bahamas and countries like Bahamas at a different standard when they don't hold countries like Switzerland under the same standard where they have?
Tell me why you think.
I know why it is. I just want to hear you say it.
Because they are more influential, they have more money, and they are the OECD. They are the UN, they are the IMF. How many Bahamians work for the UN?
I had a case.
Work for the IMF, for the OECD?
No, none.
Do you have any representation?
I had a case where we were doing a review and the account was related to China. And according to our company's country list or whatever, China is a high risk country. So in the review, we had to put like pretty much, okay, why is China a high risk country? And I said, I really don't know why. I said, apart from the human rights violations you want to talk about, right? They have a stable economy. Okay, they have their own legal framework. And I present all these different cases that are similar and I compare it to the United States. And I say the United States right now, in infringement of human rights issues, they have children in cages. So I can say that they're pretty much in the same boat. But the US is not considered a high risk country, but China is. You tell me why. And that's because people are making the laws.
Where you saying China is where you get that from, that they are? I can't tell you that they are not, but where did you get
This
that
I'm
from?
saying, this is the banks, usually a lot of banks take the Basel Index.
Yeah, right, so does the Basel Index say that they are high risk?
I think it does, yes.
Yeah.
So
They
that's
do
what I'm
say,
saying, there's a
okay.
shift, so banks pretty much should just adopt that same thing,
Okay.
okay? The
Okay.
same list of high risk country, but the question was that we have no reason as to why, right? We wanna know what factors did they consider to react our compliance. Like,
There are
if you want us to
14,
give-
no, there are 14 categories from the Basel Index that determine whether you're high risk or not. We are medium, and that was the ICA question. It spoke about Mexico and Colombia. A lot of people, just like the Bahamas, they assume that we are high risk. We are not. We are medium. Mexico is not high. And Mexico known for the drug cartel, and they have all kind of issues. And Colombia, the drug cartel of the world, is medium. Could you believe that? And so in the essays, when I was, reading over them, every single one, about 10 of them in my class, I said, Miss Pulu, you could read my essay, each one, the first opening paragraph, saying that Mexico and Colombia are high risk. They are not. I had to send everyone back.
Well,
They are not.
that was my thing. The thing is that compliance had asked us to list why it's trying to consider, and we had to go back
No,
to
the Basel Committee, if you say for sure you know, or if you go look at the index and they say for sure China is, you don't say that, they say it.
That's the
And I have 14 categories, and one of the categories is bribery and corruption and blah, blah, blah. And so where you see, like, all through the Caribbean, like the president from Brazil got impeached, South Korea got impeached. Those indicators would make them high risk. There's something called corruption perception index. Anybody who have a corruption perception index below 45 is high risk. Banks is tell you, correspondent banks tell you, we don't do business with places that have a corruption perception index less than 30. That's Moscow, that's Cameroon, that's, they stop all our payments and stuff like that. So you have the international body who, based on these 14 categories, decides whether you're high risk or not. We went to New York, tried to open up an account. We was trying to bring our trading desk from Switzerland to the Bahamas. You know what they told us? We've been to Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo. They said we don't do business with high risk. We said we're not high risk. They said show us your national risk assessment. We pulled out the one from 2015 and they say it's 2019. Are you crazy? So because this risk assessment is incomplete, on the Basel Index, our last rating was 214. So you see the net effect. Now, a boot bank trying to open an account, and we cannot prove to them that we are not high risk. So, for sure, you all Google that. Make sure the Basel Index say that. And if anybody asking you to prove it, it ain't you proving it. It's what the Basel Index says, and they have 14 categories that determine, just like your risk rating in your office determines if your customer, based on these categories, the products and services, the countries, whatever, if they're high risk or not. Yeah, but you should never have to prove.
No, I agree. My point was that the things that they consider that factors make high risk, that let's say a country like China or Brazil or whatever face, but you have a similar effect with the countries that are supposedly not high risk. You have similar effects. So who is now making the stand? Like you said, it's Switzerland, it's the countries in the UAE who make the list to make sure that they're not on the list.
So let me tell you something else. That's international policy, the Basel Index. But just how those banks, the Morgan Stanley's told us we are high risk internally. My internal policy can be that I make you high risk, right? Because of what FATF, mutual evaluation, and that's what I told them in their papers. You have to write that. While the Basel Committee says that they are medium, because of the drug cartel, because of this, my institution labels this as high risk. Because we have had major fraud in Mexico, in our banking sector, in our company. We've made Mexico high risk. But guess what? Mexicans bought the bank. And when they saw that Mexico was high risk,
They took themselves off.
damn who, how do you find out how you risk rate a country? How do you do this? How do you do that? And they didn't even know. And the minute I said the Basel Index is what we use, Mrs. Bullard, do you not see that the Basel Index says that Mexico is low risk? Please fix your records. I explained to them, here is my documentation, this is what happened with Mexico and us, and this is why we want to monitor. Oh no, I'm Mexico, born and bred, y'all are like the Americans, y'all are racist.
Try to shift the conversation.
Okay, so I had to change it.
You have to change it.
I had to change it, that man on the bank. Come on. What are you telling man on the bank? He born in Mexico, how did I? You know? And the TV, this could only been on CNN and Bloomberg, but when Mexico was playing soccer, man, the bank stopped, and he was running from office to office. Did you see that play? Did you? Okay, what you could do? As I say, so yeah, but don't always get the Basel Committee or whatever. These are the categories. This is how my recommendation is. I asking for approval by the board. Put Mexico as high risk. And for years, whilst we were a Swiss bank, it was approved. But now, the Mexican board is no longer. You have to have these things documented though and in place. So, yeah, that's how it works. You could have something low or medium. If the international bodies don't say it's high risk, but you can make something high risk low. Like if Mexico, or like you say China, the Basel Committee does say China is high risk, then of course you have to have that on your risk rating as high risk. They will know that. They don't particularly pay attention to low and medium. They pay all high risk. They will see every account. They'll do 25% of the low and medium, but every they will make sure that you monitoring those high risk accounts. Yeah. And then even if like Bahamas, let's say we were another country and we said, oh, Bahamas is medium. However, 3 politicians went to jail. I mean, or are being charged.
Right.
Now we can make, so now you have to keep abreast of what's happening in these countries. If there are politicians going, we have to look at this. You know, but normally it's safe to say every year because we put these risk ratings in place and we never check them. But different things happen, like the corruption perception index in Puerto Rico used to be 65%. Remember, anything over 40, under 45 was high risk. 65, so they were medium-ish. After that hurricane, they don't even have a, like, where the last country is probably Afghanistan with a 0, Puerto Rico and Afghanistan. So what does that mean with no risk? So you look at subsequent years, 215, 216, and then I say, well, what happened? I doing my research, looking, the only thing that happened was the hurricane. And they say since the hurricane, it's been a lot of bribery, a lot of things going on. But because it was a natural disaster, they don't wanna, because you know that ruining, because we had a Puerto Rican bank open an account with us, but they were in the U.S. But because they were a Puerto Rican bank, all that caused it. So you left to try to decide what do you do. So I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna monitor it closely anyway, since a lot of stuff going on in the country. You know, that's why you have to stay abreast of it. And like I say, the Basel Index updates every year. But once we put that risk rating in, we don't look at that. For 30 years, that didn't get updated. Right? That's the same old risk rating, but don't what the technology term is data and user computing. All the, you know, you have to check it to make sure the formulas and everything still, ain't nobody check them. If you look to the bottom, if it had a even reference date, it'd probably say 2006. You can update it from there, right? You work at the company if it is.
As far as I know, depending on the rating, they do annual reviews and like.
No, I'm talking about the customer, I'm talking about the risk rating formula sheet
Oh,
itself.
okay.
That compliance is supposed to be responsible for, and the methodology.
Yeah, okay.
If you look, the Basel Index, whenever they establish that, they put a country rating from the Basel Index from 2006. The Basel Index is changed every year. For the most part, it ain't that volatile. There ain't much changes unless something really happened. But in the last 10 years, a lot of stuff happened in Bahamas, a lot of stuff happened in Mexico. The years could have been prior low risk, they may be high now. Nobody's checked. That's what I'm saying. So compliance is responsible for that. So check your methodology, understand your methodology. You know, one bank where it was somebody must have used to wait the EFG, they just copy and paste the EFG risk rating and just, you know, they ain't even change the EFG name. Don't laugh, that's a bank. Some of our laws the other day, somebody got off because they copy the laws from the Netherlands. Every time we make laws, we copy either from Cayman, the Netherlands, or Luxembourg. So they forgot to change the name. And so they won the case because the law said the Netherlands. So the government had to pull that out and revamp it and repeal it and change it to put the Bahamas. And that person got off. Guilty, but got off. So the bank was the same thing. We are just humans, we make errors. Yeah, we just humans, yeah. Yeah, anyway, let's get back to this.
The FATF recommendations are, by their nature, advisory and must be implemented by individual countries in order to give them effect. However, it is the standard against which all countries are evaluated in respect of its AML, CFT, PF framework.
And this question, this will probably be a question that's coming up, FATF style bodies will probably be a question on your quiz.
FSRBs increase the reach of the FATF recommendations to over 180 jurisdictions across the world. Asia Pacific Group on Money Laundering, APG, based in Sydney, Australia. Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, based in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago.
CFATF.
CFATF,
Who
based
that
in
is? Why is that important to us?
That's
Okay. Okay. Do your research.
Eurasian Group, EAG, based in Moscow, Russia. Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group, ESAAMLG, based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Central Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group, GABAC, based in Libreville, Gabon. Latin America Anti-Money Laundering Group, GAFILAT, based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. West Africa Money Laundering Group, GIABA, based in Dakar, Senegal. Middle East and North Africa Financial Action Task Force, MENAFATF, based in Manama, Bahrain. Council of Europe Anti-Money Laundering Group, Moneyval, based in Strasbourg, France. Council of Europe.
Okay, so basically each section of the world, they have a group that focus, like CFATF is the Bahamas, and so they focus on the Caribbean. Right? So that's how it works.
Which one does the United States?
Let's see, based in Sydney, Moscow.
Africa continent has 3.
You know how big Africa is very, very big. It's very huge, yeah.
So who does Canada, America?
The Council of Europe. Okay, we'll have to Google to see which one does America. It might be Asia Pacific group. I know that's China, but that's only other, because and I don't think it'll be Latin America.
No.
We could Google it. We could do that for homework. Oh, she Googling now.
Let me stop you. Go ahead.
FATF mutual evaluations. Member countries have made commitments to the implementation of the 40+9 recommendations, which are monitored through a 2-tier approach, which consists of annual self-assessment exercise and on-site mutual evaluations conducted by representatives of the FATF. Member states are required to complete a questionnaire indicating their adherence to the FATF recommendations and self-assessment.
So of course, when you fill out these self-assessments or this questionnaire, you cannot say no to these questions. Like
Right.
last year, our central bank sent out questionnaires. Do you have this in place? Do you have that in place? Where you would FACA, where you would CRS. You can't say, I don't know what FACA is, I don't know, being nowhere. And we did say, they said if you are halfway through your implementation, are you 50%, 60% or whatever? And so we said, we'll discuss with the inspector. Do you know that we got a phone call from the analytics department? Where do you plan to have this discussion with the inspector, what have you, right? And then we sent in the, because we had to get, this questionnaire was for the entire bank, so we had to get information from, did you do this, did you do that? The relevant department. So of course the finance said, oh yes, of course we did that, of course we put in the financials, of course we did all of this. And so I sent that, the Securities Commission did 200 questions, Central Bank I think did 200 or 50, something, a lot, it was a lot. I sent that on, they said, where's your source document? Show us, so they want proof. So be careful with answering these surveys and saying yes, because they want source documents. Okay, so be careful with that. What they say about America?
I don't think America's under any.
Yeah, they are.
They are observers.
Which one?
APG, Asia Pacific Group.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Canada too.
Yeah. And they also act as observers apparently for some of the group.
Yeah, see, it's good to do research. Find out a lot. Find out a lot. After like to read. Y'all still awake?
Yeah. Why
Yeah.
not?
It's
Why
a
not?
lot?
Okay,
we almost there.
9.
Yeah, we almost there.
Switch
Let's
switch
just
it
go
up.
to- Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Process for mutual evaluations. Mutual evaluations involve an in-depth assessment of a country's compliance with the 40 recommendations. Each assessment takes 1 year to complete. The team is made up of 4 to 6 experts and 2 members of the secretariat members. A draft report is prepared which evaluates a country's effectiveness with implementing the 40 recommendations, and rating is given for the level of compliance. Prior to publication, the draft reports are discussed at the plenary meetings. Member countries report to the FATF 2 years after the evaluation, indicating their progress.
So our own was in 2017, I think. So 2 years would now make 2019. We had 22 deficient, and we now need to follow up. I think they said they put an action plan in place to satisfy all 22. And so we should be having a meeting now 2 years after to say what we did, or I guess they will say what is still deficient from what is, how far along they are in their action plan. But like I said, a lot of laws came out in 2018, a lot. I mean, the entire framework was like revamped.
Okay, countries with strategic deficiencies. In 2011, the FATF identified 31 jurisdictions with strategic AML, CFT, PF deficiencies. These countries had provided a high-level political commitment to address the deficiencies through the implementation of an action plan developed with the FATF. The FATF also lists jurisdictions with strategic AML, CFT, PF deficiencies that have not committed to or made sufficient progress in addressing these problems. To ensure appropriate risk assessments, it is vital that AML, CFT, PF professionals are aware which countries appear on these lists and to identify their particular regulatory flaws. The FATF has also issued guidance, best practices, and reports on specific topics: virtual currency, transparency, and beneficial ownership, etc. The International Monetary Fund. The IMF conducts financial sector assessment and provides technical assistance for financial sectors. However, after September 11, 2001, the IMF added that FATF 40 recommendations and partnered with the FATF and regional bodies with carrying out pilot AML, CFT, PF assessment in 41 jurisdictions. AML, CFT, PF assessments are now a part of the IMF's work. Now the IMF and FATF coordinate their activities relating to evaluation and assessments. The IMF continues to focus on terrorism financing, with the CFT measures being its key consideration in the assessment.
Okay, and so the IMF, we had the mutual evaluation in July 2017, and the IMF was in here in December 2018 at the central bank. Okay, and for the most part, they said that we were working on it. We read it. We had the paper clipping, you remember, from intro. They were happy with our progress that we were making and felt that we were aware of the deficiencies and working to address them.
So the visits are scheduled? The visits are scheduled?
Yeah, it's a financial services sector questionnaire, or like to get the national risk assessment going. And so they came in and made all their assessments to say, this is what you need to fix. This is,
Okay.
a part of your risk assessment is deficient because you don't even have the accountants and stuff regulated. And so they ain't giving no contribution. The compliance commission ain't giving no contribution from them because they ain't even registered with them. So, you know, couple things had to fix.
Okay, and they're scheduled to come back every so often.
I think,
However they
well,
decide.
if we had 22 deficiencies. They said that we were working, they were satisfied. You remember we read the publication, we got something out of the Guardian where they said this is what they found. They think overall we have awareness and overall we will become compliant and we are working on it. So they were kind of satisfied. Like I say, everybody has been revamped and enforcing now. They took 19 years the first time. And every time they come, it's not beneficial to us. Regulation is very expensive. Like I say now, imagine all these lawyers and real estate agents scrambling to get licensed this year, where they find that extra $100,000 from, just to get licensed. Right? So, a lot of things to consider, yeah.
The Organization for Cooperation and Economic Development, OECD. The OECD was formed to administer American and Canadian aid and given under the Marshall Plan for the reconstruction of European countries after the Second World War. It exists to act as a forum for researching, developing, and refining economic and social policies on a range of issues, and has often been regarded as an exclusive club reserved for the world's most developed economies.
Switzerland, of course.
Money laundering and harmful tax practices are two issues in which the OECD has taken a significant interest. The United States Nations, UN. The United States Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, was set up in 1997 by the United Nations to implement the Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Program and the United Nations International Drug Council Program. The UN is funded by voluntary contributions, with governments representing 90% of its budget. The overall aims of the UNODC is to assist member states in the fight against drugs, crime, and terrorism. It does this in three ways: research and analytical work, helping countries implement treaties and drafting domestic legislation, and training and judicial officials on the ground. United Nations Convention. The UN has developed several instruments to deal with money laundering and terrorist financing. More importantly, the United Nations Conventions for Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism, United Nations Convention Against Corruption, United Nations Convention Against Trafficking in Narcotics and Psychotropic. Say that again? Psychotropic substances. What is that? United Nations Conventions Against the Trafficking in Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances, Vienna Convention, saw member countries addressing drug trafficking and related money laundering. Definition of money laundering in the convention formed the basis of virtually subsequent legislation. This convention also made money laundering to be internationally extraditable offense. Although the convention was restricted to money laundering, countries have been encouraged to extend their money laundering measures to go beyond drugs to all serious crimes. United Nations Suppression of Terrorist Financing. The convention, which came into force in 2002, requires parties to take steps to prevent the counteract of the financing of terrorism, whether directly or indirectly, through groups claiming to have charitable, social, cultural goals. The convention also seeks to have countries to have civil, criminal, or administrative liability for those who finance terrorism, and provides for the identification, freezing, and seizure of funds allocated for terrorist activities. United Nations Conventions Against Corruption. This convention was signed in Mexico in 2003. It is the first legally binding multilateral treaty to address corruption on a global basis. It provides channels for governments to recover assets that have been illicitly acquired by corrupt former officials. It also provides for the criminalization of certain corruption-related activities such as bribery and money laundering. 140 countries have signed this convention.
Okay, what they call it? Psychotropic
Yeah,
substances. You all know there's this opioid
Opioid, yeah.
crisis. in America where there's some drug, I don't know what it is, whether it's speed or heroin or something.
Pills.
Yeah, these pills and these people just dropping down dead. Like you go to the club or the people that the homeless people don't have money and so they trying to get any type of cocaine or any type of whatever and so it's just killing millions and millions of people. So those type of drugs, whatever, I don't know what but y'all heard about the opioid crisis, right? So y'all can Google it to find out what type of drugs it is, but basically,
It's mostly
like,
prescription.
yeah, prescription
Yes.
drugs then.
Actually,
Yeah.
with the psychotropic drugs are usually drugs that are used for any sort of mental
So-
illnesses.
Yes, okay.
But then they turn around and use those drugs in, I guess, in an inappropriate way.
Yeah, when they get on the streets.
And the overuse it
Yeah.
and the misuse of it, so it has a real negative impact.
Yeah, it kills
on
a
them.
lot of people, like they say like 500 persons have died in New York in,
Yeah.
in 2018 just off of this
Yeah.
opioid crisis thing, yeah. Okay, good. Any questions? Yeah, so more in-depth information on the FATF, exactly what happens in the mutual evaluation and their tasks. The OECD, the UN, and the IMF. And so these are these international bodies who they sit down, they put in these recommendations or they say they're advisory, but again, if you don't implement them, they blacklist you. So I don't know, it's like a parent and child type of advisory situation. You have to do it, yeah. But, they saying they doing what's best, but, who knows?
So they force you to comply, or they make everyone else pull away from you.
Be my friend on the ones that be
Yeah,
friend.
and they rate you as high risk, and so it affects your credit rating, it affects your borrowing ability.
That affects the way your country can develop.
Right.
It's almost like bullying as well.
It's bullying.
Yes.
Well, see the
Indirect
thing about it,
bullying.
you join these associations, or you remember now, when we need money, who we running to? The World Bank is a part of the IMF, and so of course they just like China, they can lend us this money, but you must
it's always
yeah,
within-
there you go.
Yeah, because one of the things, as you mentioned it, and you say it's sort of like bullying and some instances is unfair. The IDB puts out together, similar to the World Bank doing business report.
Mhm.
And I always found that the report for the Bahamas was unfair based on the fact that we are an archipelago. The process for doing business in New Providence is so different from the process in Freeport.
Right.
And persons in Freeport have been fighting for years for them to actually separate the report in such a way that it reflects differently. Yes.
So this course requires you to read a lot. Before you read, always know who wrote.
Right.
Okay? The Swiss are very confidential because they don't want you to know how uneducated and unprofessional they are. That's why you leave this land of milk and honey, where education is at its highest level, to come and suffer here in the Bahamas
Oh, you're
with
suffering.
us
Oh, they live
uneducated
their best
people.
life.
Oh,
I won't die and come
that's
back
what
as, I won't die and come back as next swatch.
Okay.
And come live here.
Yeah, okay, so exactly. And when you get to know them, they are very uneducated idiots, but they know how to defraud the system. They add no value. None. I must have been unfortunate, but I've never worked with an
Depends.
expats are supposed to come here and they are supposed to train in a Bahamian within 3 years. Now the Department of Immigration has not enforced that, and so therefore they come and they do whatever they feel like doing. They stay for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Okay. I've never met an educated one.
It depends. I met someone educated and some educated.
I've
But
never
I-
had the
But
experience.
their general look on to us is that we're uneducated.
Yeah, of
That's the
course,
problem.
right,
That's
that's
what my
there you
problem
go.
is.
Yeah,
The
perception
general
There you go.
consensus is that we don't know
Yeah.
what we're doing here,
Yeah.
and they need to
Yeah.
recognize.
Perception.
The reason why we're number 3
Yeah.
in terms of wealth in North America.
Yeah, I've never had the privilege to work with an educated one. But you live and learn. Any questions? A lot to digest, a lot to understand. What type of questions we have on this pop quiz?
Can you tell us what multiple choice?
Yeah, it could be multiple. Well, no, you'll have to go and do research on recommendation 1 to see what happened in the Bahamas.
Research on regulation.
Yeah, just so we know how all these things, and these things are so well. In fact, y'all could probably have three research questions. Yeah, let's do that so y'all don't be overwhelmed right up front and everybody drop out the class, nobody come next week. Recommendation 1, developments in the Bahamas. IMF visit, recommendations. FATF, mutual evaluation. Give me 3 things that where we were deficient. So that's a full research. And that will be your pop quiz.
Okay.
So last one again.
The second one, the second
I
one.
don't forget, I even write these down, I don't forget.
IMF.
Okay.
The second one is the
The
IMF
second one.
visit
The IMF,
recommendations.
yeah, IMF,
Visit and
that's what she
recommendations.
asked me, what did they say? And we read that in our last class, we read that in intro, the persons who were intro. So the IMF said they overall, what they thought about the Bahamas. They talked about tax, but then they gave a list of overall what they felt about the Bahamas. You remember we read it in intro?
Yes.
Yeah.
So who got the last one?
I think
FATF mutual
Evaluation,
evaluation.
give
3 deficiencies.
C's, yeah, and would we doing the correct?
Have mutual evaluation.
So it's mutual evaluation, IMF.
And
what third
Google
one?
the record,
Three
the
deficiencies.
recommendation
Yeah.
on
And
how
what
it affects the
we,
Bahamas.
what was done to correct them. Got it?
So I give you some practice on researching.
Deficiencies, and it's done to correct it.
Okay, so call it out one more time for,
Okay, number 1 is recommendation 1, right? And the developments in the Bahamas. Number 2 is the IMF visit, their recommendations and what we did.
yeah, what did they say their
what did they say
overall from
overall,
their visit?
From their
Yeah.
visit. And number 3 is the FATF mutual evaluations. Evaluation 3 deficiencies and what we did to overcome or to correct those deficiencies.
Yeah, because remember we had 22. Of course, one should have been the business professionals, and one was recommendation 24. So y'all can look up those 2, and then a third one. One was on money service businesses too. So there's the mutual evaluation report, July 2017. It had to be because the laws were revamped in 2018. That's the FATF mutual evaluation report. IMF was in the central bank December 2018, so you put that in and you see what their overview was.
Isn't there like an IMF article for report or something like that?
Yeah, but
Summarize
that's like
everything.
100 pages. I don't want y'all to get flooded and try, because when you're doing this research,
Because
you
it has
see
a
so much
summary though.
things. Yeah, so go all the way to the back
Yeah,
of the
there's a
summary.
summary at the back.
But the newspaper had like 7 things that they said overall. Yeah, and we read it in the last class. That's the easiest to pick up rather than getting caught up. You know, you could read some of it, but you could read the introduction and then the conclusion, just so you're not overwhelmed. You know, because then you have to read chapter 2, so we can have a discussion, right? I was falling asleep through this reading. I had to pinch myself, right? Nobody else, are you with me?
He's talking about the policy initiatives, right?
What did they say overall at the end of their visit?
I only see like 5 that was listed, because I just took a picture of it, is that the same ones?
What did it say? Tell me.
I'm not sure if it's the same one.
There's a clip in out the Guardian or the Tribune where they said overall the Bahamas is compliant with blah blah blah. They have the awareness, we were pleased, stuff like that. Okay, so with the quizzes, this would be good. It doesn't say that. You in the Guardian or the Tribune?
No, this was just a clipping, something you had showed us in the past, it's someone had read, and I just took a
Yeah,
picture of
and
it.
that's what the IMF, after the IMF visit, right? You don't know? Let me go. Let me see.
You said it's by Tribune,
I didn't hear you?
the Tribune?
Tribune or Guardian, yeah, IMF visit Bahamas, please. IMF staff concludes visit to the Bahamas. The Bahamian economy continues to recover with real GDP. The fiscal responsibility law. The first, I put IMF visit Bahamas and all that come up. What they conclude. You know? So, just put that, IMF concludes visit to the Bahamas, and what did they say, you know? they commended the fiscal policy. They credit tourism boom for economic growth. That was in the Guardian, December the 11th. They praised the government efforts. It recommends a more equitable tax system. Yeah, couple when you pull it up, you know, you see some stuff. 3 points and you should be good. Okay, so let's do this. This week, because you're researching for that exam. Next week, for homework, you'll read, well, you'll actually need to look at, because I don't want y'all to get overwhelmed. So leave the Egmont group, unless you have extra time, and then next week we'll read Egmont group, and then you'll have a exam on chapters 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, right? Because when you study in now, I want you to look all the way, the last pages at the back of the book. This shows you what a W8, a W9, and a W pen is, so y'all, yeah.
The W8 is simple.
But some persons never even see, anybody who never saw a W8? Okay, yeah. They're at the back of the book. So when you read chapter 2, the last page, you flip to the back of the book so you see what it is. And even though we see what they are, a lot of people still get them confused.
Oh, we actually only fill out one page of the W8, so it's not as simple as it may.
Yeah, so you. And then in chapter 2, there's a reading too, and you could pull it up. The IRC versus Westminster. 17. So you're just don't read past these cases and don't, be able to let's discuss them. And make sure you look at those forms so you understand what they do. But like I say, you take a break when you start to get overwhelmed and we go stagger it. So, 1 week you do this. So this week you doing that research. Next week you will read 1 or 2 of the Egmont group cases. Then the following week we'll have the chapters 2 and 3 pop quiz like that. Okay? So please read. Please read the newspaper every day. Please keep abreast of the industry and it, it's more than just in the classroom. I should put something from one of the industry updates on your pop quiz.
That's easy.
Yeah, stop. We can work up there by the 10th week. By the final exam, y'all probably have to, one of your essays could be on the mandatory essay could be on industry update that you attended. That seems like the only way I can get y'all out there. Asking my say this every class, right? Every class I've been beating it into yours, so I gotta make it, that's your final exam. Tell me about the industry update. What did the slides say? Where did you go? How did you find out about it? What did you learn? Who did you meet? 10 points.
Anything that you would have done, I guess. I think industry updates.
So I could be reading the newspaper to see. And if they have 10 conferences in this 10 week and you all don't attend none, I can see you all next semester.
We're working on.
Yeah, fine. Go talk to your HR and let them know that you're in this course and it requires you to do field work to pass. You normally have a project, I took out the project just to make it not so comprehensive, to allow time for you to go and do, the same time you would have been at work, cyber loafing and doing your homework rather than your work, just the same time you go to the seminar. Only me wants to do that, you all really law abiding citizens, you all don't break no rules, right? Only me. Right, so that same time is when you'll go and attend a seminar. Or you will go to your compliance department and ask them,
Okay, well,
what seminar they attended, and they supposed to be disseminating the information, any updates from the regulator, any seminar they attend, they should have decks, what have you. It's right there available. Anybody ever been in ARCS? They have decks upon decks upon decks. Nobody is ARCS. Remember, you start in your library. Yeah, but you can do it. Don't be overwhelmed. Stagger your readings and just get organized and you'll be fine. And know where to go for help.
CFA just had a very good event last week.
There you go.
It's very good in progress, and in fact, I think they're thinking of making it into a series because it was so, it wasn't just a matter
Informative
of
and-
it was informative. It was very open and discussion based.
Okay.
It was apolitical because they invited both FNM and PNP persons to present. So it was a very open and frank dialogue. And I think they did leave with some follow-up actions. And persons have asked if they could continue after every budget,
Okay.
if CFA could look into at least doing
Right,
something like that.
because the budget is very extensive.
Right.
And you do need to break it down.
And the minister did spend some time explaining things that people read and they really didn't understand exactly what it
They just fly off the handle with it. Oh, they putting the bottom.
Yes,
That's
he
all
did.
somebody else is
He
saying.
did explain it.
Yeah, everybody fly off the handles. Right?
Glory.
Yeah, go. Yep. See you next week. Take a rest and come back rejuvenated.
Gotta go to overtime. Oh, they're coming in.
Okay? All right, take care.
I'm looking at it, I'm saying, I know you from somewhere. Somewhere?
Take off my disguise. And
Okay.
that's why I don't recognize
Oh
Clark
my
Kent with glasses.
gosh.
This is why. I know. Yes.
Exchange numbers. You
We
ready
did.
to help
You
each
did.
other?
You
Okay,
did.
good.
But that is exactly the same.
All right, take
The
care.
same as how long ago?
You all come next week with a provocative discussion now. Provocative.
You could just alright, hold God grace. Come to the devil's garment. You could just alright.
Girl, I like to read,
I know I
so,
just came back, I read.
yeah, I'm a reader.
All right, feel free to call me up at that time,
Yes, ma'am.
because I think the quicker the better.
Yeah, I think so as well. I try to do a lot on the weekend because I do work very late hours, so I have to do a lot on the weekend. So, which part?
It's not a bind, it's just
Give me the name.
great public services.
What's the surname? Rule? What's the name of it? Green as in the color green? Okay, I'll do this.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Still doing your breaking thing? And so we can set a time, maybe?
Yeah,
So
I'll
let's
call
get
you.
through it first and then
Right.
see.
I'll call
Because
you.
there's a lot to
Because I gotta go back and read it again by myself.
Yes, that's what I have
And
to do.
then make some notes and then we could have like discussions and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's no time. What's up?
Alright, so we could. I see you, darling.
So I'll add you and everything.
Multiply.
You can add- you can
Miguel.
like it-
What'd you say? Everything good?
Everything's good. How are you?